Howdy neighbor, how is your garden growing? Today in my garden, we're gonna talk about lawn alternatives in hot climates. We're gonna talk about the pros, the cons, which plants and why they may or may not work for you. We'll talk about, can you stand on it? Can you walk on it? Can you run on it? Can your dog run on it? Especially your big dogs. Can you have it over your septic field? How often do you have to mow it? What other problems will you have? Is it gonna jump into your neighbor's yard? And so much more. So join me today as we talk about lawn alternatives for hot climates. So when we talk hot climates, I'm talking your zone 8s, your zone 9s, your zone 10s, your zone 11s. I'm talking about my people who live in the south of the United States or similar climates. Me specifically, I live in zone 10 in Florida, and I have tested out many different types of lawn alternatives. So the first question I get a lot is, why didn't you choose clover? Why aren't you doing clover? Should you do clover? Could I do clover? So in general, I have not considered or done clover because I first off tend to focus on native plants. Why? Because if you're going to replace the grass, the most environmentally friendly thing to do is get a native plant in. And in general, when it comes to clovers, there's really not, I mean, there are, but there aren't native, specifically sorrels to my area. And the challenge with the sorrels slash clovers is that they don't grow year round here. Even clover that you can buy from online doesn't grow year round. And thus you would have to mix it with something else. And since it's not native to my area, if I go buy the stuff online, I mean, then why? So let's move on to the other ones. So if you want to do clover, sure. And there's lots of other people who do videos about clover, but I'm not going to really be talking about clover. That's why I don't do it. That's why I'm not interested in it. So let me talk about first one of my favorite lawn alternatives, and it's actually the majority of the lawn you see behind me, and that's going to be frog fruit. You may notice a ton of butterflies flying behind me, specifically some white ones, which might have some of you freaking out because then you see the vegetable garden even further behind me and you're thinking, oh my gosh, the cabbage moths. Those, my dears, are white peacocks, and white peacocks love frog fruit. One of the pros for if you're thinking about frog fruit is that the butterflies like it, the bees like it, the birds like it. Well, the birds kind of indirectly like it, which we'll get to. So basically frog fruit is what we call a host plant. That means that the butterflies put their eggs on the plant, the caterpillars hatch out of those eggs and then they eat the leaves and then they go and turn into butterflies. Now, unlike if you've ever done butterfly gardening and you're familiar with milkweed that gets eaten down to sticks by the butterfly caterpillars, that's not what you're gonna get with this. The caterpillars are so tiny, it is really hard to even find them. And you will more often than not be able to see evidence that you have caterpillars than actually see caterpillars. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands of caterpillars in here, but we can't really tell. It just in general looks like a green mat. But the cool thing is we get all these butterflies. And this one's the host plant to 3 different types of butterfly. The white peacock, the Phaon crescent, and the common buckeye. Now, which butterfly you'll get will depend on where you live. We don't really get common buckeyes in my county, but we do get sometimes Phaon crescents, and we definitely get white peacocks, which is why you see like a million of them flying behind me. These also have small flowers. They kind of look like matchsticks, which is why sometimes it'll be sold as matchstick plant, but we all like the name frog fruit better. And because there's so many caterpillars on these plants, you will tend to get lots of songbirds. So in the morning time, you know, when I'm not sitting out here, you'll see things like grackles and doves and mockingbirds, blue jays, a whole myriad of just different songbirds out here because they love caterpillars. So now the questions you may be asking, can you stand on it? Can you walk on it? Can you run on it? What about your dog? One like that might run back and forth and usually creates like, you know, the dead zone strip. Yeah, we had one. And that's right, we had one. Our strip is slowly disappearing, and that's actually because of the frog fruit. So yes, you can stand on frog fruit. Yes, you can walk on frog fruit. Basically every day when we're taking, oh, not every day, multiple times a day, we come out here and we stand on the frog fruit lawn. And Miss Shiloh, who is about 50 pounds, goes sprinting back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for the ball. You know how it goes with the dogs. She does that thing. Now, we basically had a complete dead zone that started right here and went all the way, and then all of that was dead. And slowly this year, the frog fruit has spread in and started to take over. And every day that we get rain, it spreads more and more in and is slowly closing this gap. Next question you might ask is all about the water septic. I know a lot of people, I don't have this issue specifically. Like you have a septic tank down below, you have a drain field you need to worry about. I don't have this, but what I have done is many times had to dig this up and remove it from areas. And I will tell you, the roots do not go so deep. There are other lawn alternatives, they go deep and would not be a good choice if you have septic. But frog fruit, they're getting about a foot, 18 inches, and they might have fine roots, very fine roots that are going deeper into the 2-foot range, maybe even 3 foot. But these are not going to have nice, thick, chunky, monkey roots going 6 feet, 8 feet down. So this is totally appropriate for your septic and drain field area based on what I have observed when removing it from sections. And I've removed it from, like, you know, some areas. Which may bring you to the question of, what about the neighbors? If the roots aren't going so deep and it seems to be filling in, will it jump into their yard? Will it jump into their lawn? Well, the good thing is my neighbor right here, he loves native plants and he loves flowers. So he and I 2 years ago ripped out his grass and put Frogfruit in. And so I can't say from that side, but I would tell you it has the potential. If it was one of those cases where you have a strip of grass or lawn alternative and then it's their yard, it will probably creep into their lawn. Yeah, it just will. But it could be given some very basic barriers and be edged regularly to, in general, keep it out, though it could potentially reseed and jump. And since most people consider this a weed, aka a plant that we don't want there, they may be frustrated by that, so that it is something to watch out for. You're wondering, can it come up and through into other beds, like if you have it next to some raised garden beds, or is it possible to climb? I will say it does a little bit of climbing, but nothing really that aggressive. If you were edging this regularly, it would stay down. If you had a bed where, you know, maybe it's wood, it could put some little roots and start to climb. But again, they're not that difficult to remove, so. Now, one of your questions might be, how often do you have to mow it? And this is something that Mr. Cliff and I have been looking at over the last couple years. And my answer is, it depends on what look, it depends on how much maintenance, will depend on how much you need to do. If you want a lawn that looks like this, where it's kind of the classic mat, you know, kind of looks similar to those Clover lawns, you're gonna mow this just as often as you mow a regular lawn. That is if it's on irrigation. This plant doesn't grow as vigorously if it's not on water. But there's some reasons why you may want to still have it on a sprinkler system, even though it's native. So currently, because we're in the summer months, which is the monsoon months, this is getting mowed basically weekly. In the winter time, it would go from, you know, every 2 weeks to once a week and maintain this kind of matte look. But if you're looking for a lawn alternative that you don't mow as often, you can mow this less, which is what my neighbor, Mr. Cliff, does. He only mows it, even in monsoon season, every 2 to 3 weeks. But the challenge that I'm finding with him only mowing it 2 or 3, how do I put this, twice a month or only once a month, is that we're getting a lot more weeds popping through, aka old grass plus other invasive species coming through. And so if you don't keep it as tight, you're gonna have more weeds. And if you have more weeds, we're more likely to, 1, just create more maintenance work for ourselves, and 2, potentially want to grab some herbicides, you know, the weed sprayers, to get rid of them. And I will tell you guys, right before we hit the rainy season, this was looking a lot looser and was giving a lot more spaces for seeds to jump in. When it comes to mowing and edging, I would recommend you keep it about the same frequency as you would typically do a grass lawn. Now, you may be wondering, what about the herbicides, the pesticides, and the reseeding, you know, all that other work that you tend to do with this plant? When it comes to this plant, because it's a trailing plant and it will actually like reroot all along its nodes, you don't need to reseed it once it's established. Item 1. Item 2, it actually creates a pretty strong mat if you're watering it and mowing regularly. So it will push out other weeds, which is, I think, really beneficial. So your potential need for herbicides really goes down. And when it comes to pesticides, well, the biggest thing eating it are, you know, caterpillars, and they're not gonna kill it. So I don't really foresee you needing to get pesticides with this one, like I know a lot of people do with grass. And because most of your neighbors aren't gonna have it, we don't have a monoculture for something to kind of really take off. And in general, it's gonna be much more resilient. Now, where I find that there's some challenges that people are having when talking to people who have tried to do frogfruit lawns is, 1, if they don't have irrigation. People in Florida who live very close to me have tried doing frogfruit lawns without irrigation and have found during the drought months that their frogfruit dies and then doesn't come back, or it just takes a really long time. This plant is a plant that would naturally kind of be near lakes, canals, springs, stuff like that. It's kind of more of like water adjacent plants. And so it does want a little bit more water. It doesn't necessarily need as much water as like your grass. I notice a lot of people, some of my neighbors during the drought season are running their sprinklers 3 times, 4 times a week. Insane. To keep their grass looking really good. We just kind of do the standard amount, mostly because of our vegetable garden and everything's just the same system. So, and I think it honestly has the potential to go down to once a week, but I have not tested that. If you have, or you have other tips or thoughts on frog fruit, just go ahead and throw it in the comments down below so we can all keep learning. / if you have more questions, I keep coming back and talking about this, so I'll come look at the questions and do my best to answer them now or in a video later. My yard isn't just frog fruit. In the back, we actually have kind of 3 main native plants acting as ground cover. The majority of it's frog fruit, but actually closer to the water spout exits, you know, like the drains come down and out, we actually have water hyssop. And this is another weed that pops into people's yard, but it is native to Florida and other locations too. That is also a host plant. It has flowers for bees, and of course then like the birds are hanging out in it. If you're a person who likes to walk with no shoes on, I definitely think water hyssop is really nice compared to frog fruit. But I will say, if you're already walking on your St. Augustine hot climate grass, frog fruit's equal. So St. Augustine grass, frog fruit, I would put the same equivalency for comfort level on the feet. I would say water hyssop is a little bit nicer, a little bit softer, but it also requires more water. That's why we're just really naturally like right here. You can see we have the drain comes down, it goes underground, it comes out, dumps a lot of extra water, and then there's like a slope this way, which is why it's growing really well here. It doesn't get any additional watering. And usually where I see in people's lawns is near kind of the stormwater drains and the edges with down slopes near sprinklers. So it's a good one to mix in if you kind of have like a little bit wetter area. That one's really fun, but would potentially need more than a typical grass lawn would need. So from an environmentally friendly standpoint, if you're in more of a drought tolerant area or you're trying to help conserve water, I would not, no. The other one that's seeming to grow just all on its own in my yard is Ponyfoot. This was not anyone, no one sells this. Again, it's usually a weed, but it doesn't have any like the annoying seeds or thorns or all this stuff. And it kind of has more of that clover vibe if you're really into the clover vibe. This is the thing that actually kind of grew first in the no-go zone of Shiloh. Hi, Shiloh. Running back and forth. But you can see it has a looser structure, but it is soft like clover. So when it comes on its walking runability, this one is walked on regularly. It is stood on regularly. It gets run on some frequency by Shiloh. Hi, Shiloh. But this one you can see it has a looser structure. So other things are popping in from time to time, but because of its like more horizontal structure, it's holding moisture. So the grass that had in general died is starting to bounce back. I think this is going to be kind of a nice mix because the frog fruit in this section where I planted a couple months ago is running in and is going to start mixing pretty soon with this. And then we can kind of reset this area on all the weeds. But I'm trying to get the ground cover in. Pretty lawn, pretty lawn, pretty lawn, pretty lawn. Now there's some other popular lawn alternatives that I usually hear in Florida that you might want to consider, but buyer beware. Now this next section I'm going to show you is more recently planted. It's probably one of the newest areas we planted with frog fruit. And because it was dug all the way down to scratch soil, completely barren, we have a lot of weeds we're working through getting out, and they will get out over time. I'll talk to you about conversion process after we get through some of these lawn alternatives, but you're going to notice a lot more textural differences, and that's what's driving it. So while in the back we have a mix of water hyssop and frog fruit, this next area has a mix of sunshine mimosa and frog fruit, with the frog fruit being most recently planted. The sunshine mimosa I've had for 3 years. So here we can see a mixture of frog fruit and sunshine mimosa. This is getting mowed again at the same frequency as grass. And what you can see here is our frog fruit, and here is our sunshine mimosa. If you're not familiar with it, it has these like little powder puffs. It's looking a little sad right now. We've had rain on and off over and over again. I literally started this video like 5 times now. And you can see it's a sensitive plant, so as you touch it, the leaves close, which is really fun for little kids. But I would say that is also a big challenge for this plant, because once the leaves close, oh wow, look at all the ground for random weeds to come in. Now this plant is aggressive. It will definitely bounce and jump through things. Oh look, the newly built brick wall. It has totally jumped right through this, even though this was mowed just days ago. And honestly, it's jumped up even into this bed. And yes, you'd be right to think, is that vegetable bed filled with sunshine mimosa? Why would you have it in there? I didn't. I filled this 17-inch tall bed with mulch all the way to here, then soil, and it busted through all of this. This plant, hands down, is one of the most aggressive lawn alternatives. It will jump up and into other beds. It will cross into your neighbor's yard. And if you try to get it out, good luck. Because this one is reported to have roots that go 6 feet to even potentially up to 20 feet deep. This is not recommended for your septic area. Oh no, does that mean no one should use it? Well, clearly I'm using it, and there are reasons you should use it. If you have areas that, one, don't have irrigation, this one is massively resilient because it puts such deep roots. It just like can go the distance. Now, what I find in my area is that it dies back a lot. Well, it doesn't die back. It kind of goes away in the winter time as we go through drought season and it gets colder and colder, which is why I don't feel like it's really good at suppressing weeds. Once the rains start to come and it heats up, this thing like bounces back so fast. So if you have areas that are like, one, surrounded by like cement, you know, like you have your sidewalk, then a strip, then the road, this is great for that. In the middle median of highways, it's great for that. Stand on it, yes. Can you walk on it? Yes. Can your dogs run on it? Yes. But what I do find is because it's more viney than our frog fruit, it's easier to trip on stuff. So something that you might want to consider to avoid. But it will kind of go everywhere. I would say frog fruit versus sunshine mimosa. I feel like frog fruit will go into shadier locations than a sunshine mimosa. So you really want areas like with full sun. The other thing is that it tends to get fuller and be better at keeping out weeds when you mow it. But if you mow it, you don't get as many flowers, which is why you don't see very many flowers on there right now. So, you know, you got options. But this is where it can be really good to mix it with other things. This is honestly why I mixed it with frog fruits, because in my area, zone 10, frog fruit will go through this winter time. So when sunshine mimosa is dying back, frog fruit will continue to expand if it's on an irrigation system, so it can help fill the gaps. But trust me, you're not gonna get rid of sunshine mimosa with a frog fruit. So it'll just bounce back once it heats up. Now your question might be, what about the shady areas? While frog fruit can be okay, and Ponyfoot clearly was doing something, really when it comes to shadier areas, creeping sage is probably one of the strongest lawn alternatives for us. It's nice because it has like, you know, a sagey, minty smell. And I've only recently started to use it as a true lawn alternative and not a ground cover. So we're still testing out its ability to handle standing on, walking on, running on, you know, all the jazz. But if you want to get an idea of what it looks like, it looks a little bit like this. Very pretty, and you can see here it is mixed with some sunshine mimosa in a semi-shade area, but you can see it clearly grow in even shadier locations. So while this one's a little bit newer to me, feel free to leave questions or your own personal experience with using things like creeping sage as a lawn alternative. Now, some of you are probably screaming from the background. One of the most favorite lawn alternatives, usually one of the first ones people hear, if it's not sunshine mimosa, it's perennial peanut. Now, first off, this isn't native. It's not native. In my area, it's considered Florida friendly. So here are the things I will tell you about what I know and have heard over and over and over and over again from Florida gardeners. So perennial peanut, similar to sunshine mimosa and frog fruit, has some similar qualities, as in that it stays in general green year round. It doesn't die back necessarily. It's pretty good at matting. It has pretty yellow orange flowers, which a lot of people think are really cute, but similar to definitely to sunshine mimosa is it is an aggressive grower. So if you have it in an irrigated area, expect it to jump into your flower beds. I've heard that regularly. 2, if you ever decide to get rid of it, kind of similar to sunshine mimosa, like good luck. This one also has really deep root systems. This is why it's similar to sunshine mimosa in the fact that it's really good for those like medians and the, as we call the devil's strip, right? The section between the road and the sidewalk. Once it's established, it doesn't necessarily need additional irrigation beyond whatever rainfall there is. Sunshine mimosa and perennial peanut is the one I consistently hear from Florida gardeners that once they get it in, like it takes them years and years and years and a lot of chemical treatments to get it back out. So you better be sure you want it everywhere. Everywhere. But maybe you're still excited about lawn alternatives and you're thinking to yourself, how to convert it? Should I just rip all my lawn out? The answer is no, don't do that. That's like a really bad idea. As someone who has had my yard killed by my dog and then have tried to get lawn alternatives established, and watching in the Florida gardening community people try to convert their yards, I would suggest you don't rip your yard out. Instead, where I have found it has been established the best is you cut in to your lawn. Because remember, your grass lawns, I mean, you're already fighting a battle to keep these things alive. So what's better is to cut out little patches. I know for me, there are a lot of native nurseries that sell like Frogfruit in little 4-inchers. Usually you can find them like 18 little 4-inchers for about $50 to $60. And you can put these every 3 feet and insert them in your lawn. The reason is because remember, this is kind of a water loving plant. So to get it established, it wants to have moisture. And if you rip everything out, you're gonna have a lot of basically drought conditions, which means those plants take forever to get established. And while they're waiting, all your little weed seeds are jumping in and creating a mess for you. So instead, cut out little patches. Just put the 4-incher in, you know, put your little 4-inch in, let the grass hold the moisture in, let it give it a little bit of cover, and slowly, trust me, the frog fruit will just, you keep mowing your lawn like it's just every day, you keep edging it like just like it's every day, like you're gonna do the normal way, and slowly over time, you're gonna, when you should be reseeding for grass, the frog fruit starts to take over and you don't need to reseed. And you just keep putting in these plugs. And what's cool about it is it keeps running. It runs and runs and runs. If you have centipede grass, kind of similar idea, but it does better when there are other plants established, and you just keep mowing and it'll just slowly take over. So that's my 2 cents for converting. I have tried to convert before very methodically. I did a project a year ago, 2 years ago. It didn't go well. Shiloh killed it all. Terrible idea. While it can be run on, you know, eventually, not initially. And if you're thinking, wow, that hurts my feelings to hear it that way, don't worry, I already did this mistake. I already did this last year, trying to establish it in the sandy land of my dog's runway. It was a bad idea, it didn't work. She killed almost every plant immediately, like legitimately within 2 weeks. And I was like, well, that project's done. But the thing that I learned was that this spot right here, because she doesn't run next to the drain covers, 1 plant survived out of like 20 that I planted. And that one just sat there, which brings me to my next point. Only 1 survived. And that was about a year ago at this point. And here's the thing. It just sat there forever. I didn't even realize it was still alive. And it just sat there and sat there. And then come January, all of a sudden it heated back up a little bit. And that 1 tiny little plant has become almost the entirety of this lawn. So they're slow going, which is why I don't want you to tear out all of your lawn, because they just hang out. I just did a new grouping of plantings in this torpedo grass mess over here, and I planted those now 2 months ago. And those plants are still itty bitty little babies. They are nothing still. But I know with time, they're just gonna whoosh, and then I'll have to figure out the weed part and get everything else out. And if all of these plants have got you excited about adding native plants to your garden well beyond your lawn, go ahead and check out this video about beginner native plants that you should be adding to your garden. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.